You remember the quiet. Not the kind that comes after a storm. No, not that kind of relief. This quiet was different. It lived in your bones before you even knew what bones were for. It was the hush that settled over the dinner table when someone's voice got too sharp. It was the way you learned to fold your laughter into origami so small, no one could hear it unfold. You didn't choose silence. Silence chose you because it kept you safe. Maybe you sat on the edge of your bed at night, listening to the house breathe around you, holding your breath so no one would notice you were still awake. Maybe you watched from the doorway as emotions swirled like weather systems you weren't allowed to step into. You learned early. Some feelings are welcome. Others must be tucked away like contraband. And so you became very good at disappearing, not by leaving, but by staying perfectly still inside yourself. There was no dramatic moment, no single incident you can point to and say, "That's when I stopped speaking." It happened in increments, in glances withheld, in questions swallowed, in the space between what you felt and what you said, growing wider, quieter, until it became your whole inner landscape. You didn't vanish, but you learned how to make yourself small enough to fit inside other people's comfort zones. And somewhere along the way, you mistook that survival skill for who you really were. What you carried wasn't shyness. It wasn't introversion, though people called it that to make sense of you. What you lived with was something more tender and more complicated. It was the psychology of a child who learned to stay quiet not because they had nothing to say, but because saying anything risked too much. Risked being seen as too much. Risked disrupting the fragile peace of a home that couldn't hold big emotions. Risked becoming the problem instead of the solution. This quiet wasn't empty. It was full, overflowing actually, with everything you never let out. Grief you folded into your pockets. Anger you turned inward like a secret compass. Joy you muted so it wouldn't draw attention. You became fluent in absence, a master of omission. And the strangest part, no one noticed, or if they did, they praised you for it. You're so easygoing. You never caused trouble. You're such a good kid. But those words never reached the part of you that ached to be known. Not just tolerated, not just approved of, but truly seen, even in your messiness, even in your noise. So you kept quiet, not because you wanted to, but because silence became your first language of love. Your earliest offering to a world that seemed to flinch at anything too real. And now, as an adult, you carry that language with you. Spoken in sighs instead of sentences, in hesitation instead of honesty, in the careful editing of your own presence before you even enter a room. You don't need to fix it. Not yet. First, you just need to name it. To say softly, without judgment, "This is what it was like. This is how I learned to survive. This is why I disappear even from myself." You were never born quiet. Babies cry. They coo. They babble without shame, without strategy. They expect to be heard because at first someone usually listens. But somewhere in those early years, maybe before you turned 5, maybe even earlier, the listening changed. Not all at once. Not with a bang. But in the subtle shift of a caregiver's face when you cried too long. In the way your excitement was met with a tired sigh instead of shared delight. In the silence that followed when you asked a question that opened a door someone didn't want walked through. Children are brilliant emotional archaeologists. They don't need lectures to understand what's safe and what isn't. They read tone like Braille. They map moods like cartographers. And if they sense that their feelings cause discomfort, that their joy is inconvenient, their sadness burdensome, their anger dangerous. They adapt fast. So you began to calibrate. You watched for cues. Was now a good time to speak? Was this feeling allowed? Would saying, "I'm scared," bring comfort or make things worse? Maybe your parent was overwhelmed, drowning in their own unprocessed pain, stretched thin by life, love, or loss. Maybe there was chaos in the home, shouting behind closed doors, tension thick enough to choke on. Or maybe it was quieter than that. A household where emotions were treated like guests who'd overstay their welcome, where calm wasn't peace, it was performance. In any case, you learned the rules without ever being taught them. Rule 1, don't add to the weight. Rule 2, your needs come after everyone else's. Rule 3, if you must feel something big, do it alone and quietly. And so your nervous system rewired itself around restraint. Your voice box grew cautious. Your tears learned to fall inward. You became hyper-aware of others' emotional states, not because you were naturally empathetic, though you might be, but because your safety depended on it. This wasn't weakness. It was adaptation. A brilliant, heartbreaking act of self-preservation by a small person with very few tools. You weren't ignored because you didn't matter. Often, it was the opposite. You mattered so much that you couldn't bear to be the source of more strain. So you folded yourself smaller, quieter, more manageable. And over time, that folding became automatic. Not a choice, but a reflex, like flinching before the hand even moves. Now, as an adult, you might wonder why you hesitate before sharing good news, why you downplay your struggles, why you apologize for taking up space, even metaphorical space like expressing an opinion or asking for help. It's not because you're broken. It's because your earliest lessons about connection came wrapped in silence. You were taught implicitly, relentlessly, that love is conditional on your ability to stay out of the way emotionally. And that belief didn't vanish when you grew up. It just moved underground, where it still hums, softly, beneath every interaction. Am I too much? Will they leave if I speak? Is it safer to say nothing at all? You see it sometimes, in the way your throat tightens before you speak in a meeting, in the way you rehearse texts 3 times before sending them, deleting anything that sounds needy or dramatic, in the way you nod along while someone talks over you, swallowing the words you'd planned to say like bitter pills. And then there's the mirror moment. It might happen when you're with a friend who's crying, and you find yourself soothing them with calm words while your own chest feels like it's splitting open. Or when your partner asks, "What's wrong?" And you say, "Nothing," even though everything is wrong. You just don't know how to name it without feeling like a burden. That's the echo. The child who learned to stay quiet is still there, still scanning the room for danger, still measuring the emotional temperature before daring to exhale. You might notice it in your relationships. You give endlessly but rarely ask for anything in return. Not because you don't need, but because asking feels like risking rejection. Like pulling a thread that might unravel the whole tapestry of connection you've so carefully woven. Or maybe you've been told you're hard to read. People say they never know what you're thinking. And part of you feels proud because being unreadable means you're safe. But another part aches with loneliness because being unseen is its own kind of abandonment. Even in joy, the quiet lingers. You get good news, a promotion, a creative win, a moment of genuine happiness, and your first instinct isn't to celebrate. It's to minimize, to say, "It's not that big a deal." because somewhere deep down you fear that if you let yourself be too happy, someone will notice and take it away. Or worse, they'll expect you to keep performing that happiness, and you'll run out of energy pretending. This isn't pathology. It's imprinting. Your nervous system still believes that silence equals safety, that invisibility equals love, that if you stay small enough, you won't disrupt the fragile balance of belonging. And so you hold your breath in rooms full of air. You smile when you want to scream. You say, "I'm fine," when your insides are trembling. Not because you're dishonest, but because honesty once felt like a luxury you couldn't afford. The child within you isn't trying to sabotage your adult life. They're just doing what they've always done, protecting you from perceived threat, from emotional overwhelm, from the terrifying vulnerability of being fully known. And every time you choose silence over truth, not out of preference, but out of old fear, that child sighs in relief. Good. We're safe again. Even if safe feels like a cage. Even if safe leaves you feeling hollow. Because to that child, hollow is better than shattered. Now, as an adult, you live in a quiet war. On one side, the part of you that longs to be real, to speak your mind, to set boundaries, to say no without guilt, to take up space without apology. On the other, the deeply ingrained belief that doing so will make you unlovable. This conflict doesn't announce itself with drama. It lives in the background hum of your daily life, in the exhaustion after social gatherings, not because you talk too much, but because you held yourself so tightly contained, in the resentment that builds when you say yes again, even though your body was screaming no, in the dreams where you're trying to shout but no sound comes out. You might find yourself drawn to loud, expressive people, the ones who seem to occupy their lives without permission. You admire them, maybe even envy them, but part of you also flinches because their freedom feels dangerous, uncontrollable, like watching someone walk barefoot on broken glass and not understanding how they don't bleed. And then there's the loneliness, not the kind that comes from being alone, but the kind that comes from being with people while feeling utterly disconnected from yourself. You're present in body, but your true voice is locked away, pacing behind glass. You might try to override it, force yourself to speak up, practice assertiveness like a foreign language, but it often feels unnatural, like wearing someone else's skin. Because your silence wasn't laziness or passivity. It was strategy, survival, and survival doesn't surrender easily. The cost shows up in your health too. Chronic tension in your shoulders, a stomach that knots at the slightest conflict, sleepless nights spent replaying conversations, wondering if you said too much or not enough. You might even sabotage good things, pull away when someone gets too close, because intimacy requires noise, messy, unpredictable, unedited noise, and your system still equates noise with danger. So you stay in the quiet, not because you want to, but because the alternative feels like freefall. And yet, there's a whisper beneath all this. A quiet rebellion, the part of you that's tired of editing yourself into palatability, that wants to feel your own voice vibrate in your chest without fear, that wonders, in the deepest hours of the night, what if I didn't have to disappear to be loved? That question isn't weakness. It's the first tremor of something new, not a demand for change, just a soft, persistent curiosity. And it's enough for now. You don't need to become loud. You don't need to perform extroversion or force yourself into emotional exposure like it's a test you must pass. What you need isn't transformation, it's recognition. The quiet you carry was never a flaw. It was a language, a dialect of care, caution, and deep attunement. It helped you navigate a world that didn't always have room for your fullness. And it's okay if that language still lives in you, not as a prison, but as a part of your story. You can honor the child who learned to stay quiet without staying silent forever. You can hold both truths at once. This silence kept me safe, and I am safe enough now to let other parts of me speak. Not all at once, not perfectly, but in small, trembling increments, like the first green shoot after a long winter. Maybe today, safety looks like texting a friend, "I'm not okay," instead of, "I'm fine." Maybe it's pausing before you say yes, and letting the silence hang long enough for your real answer to surface. Maybe it's allowing yourself to cry in the shower without rushing to stop it, just to feel the relief of release, even if no one else hears. There's no deadline, no performance review on your healing. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're simply returning slowly, gently, to the parts of yourself that were set aside so you could survive. And returning doesn't mean rejecting the quiet. It means making space beside it, for sighs, for stumbles, for sentences that start shaky and end strong, for the right to be both tender and truthful. Your voice doesn't have to be loud to be valid. It just has to be yours. You were quiet not because you had nothing to say, but because your soul was learning how to stay whole in a world that asked you to shrink. Now, you don't have to earn the right to take up space. You already belong, exactly as you are, in your softness, in your pauses, in your unspoken depths. And if today all you can do is whisper, that is enough. Because even whispers echo in the hearts of those who are ready to listen. You are not too much. You never were. You are simply becoming more and more yourself.